I was in school with Phil in a place called Crumlin in Dublin, and it was a fairly big, Christian Brothers school. There was about maybe 2,000 people in there. There was this one guy just stuck out because he was black, and it was the only black guy in the whole school, which was Phil. And a friend of mine said, Phil plays in a band. The band's called the Black Eagles. And I said, oh yeah, I've heard about them. They're actually playing down in the local cinema, which is the Apollo Cinema. Every Saturday night he had a kind of a residency down there, and why don't we go down and check them out? So I asked my dad to give me, I think it was 2 and 6pence or something to get into it, and he kind of grudgingly gave it to me, So I went down there, and with my friend we tried to get up as close to the front as possible, and when they came on I didn't recognise Phil. He totally changed, had lovely clothes, and he had this glove, I remember, I sort of used to wear this black glove, and he used to hold a microphone because he never played bass at this stage, it was really, really, really good, and the crowd went crazy, went wild. I sort of seen him in school the next Monday, and I plucked up the courage to go over and say, listen, Phil, it was really, really a good gig. He said, oh, thanks a lot, So I said, I play drums as well, and I've got a kind of a small band as well around Crumlin, where he lived as well. And he says, oh yeah, he says, come down with your kit, and I put in a good word for you. So he obviously did, and after about 2 numbers, I did this number called You Really Got Me by the Kinks. And, after about 6 or 7 bars of this, they all went, stop, I went, oh, I must have done something wrong. He says, that's great, our drummer couldn't play that beat, So that gave me lots of encouragement, So after a couple of numbers, they just stopped and said, yeah, that's okay, we're playing in the local St. Paul's Hall, I think it was, in a place called Mount Argus in Dublin. Next Saturday, available? And I said, of course I'm available, yeah. So we just started rehearsing then, just straight away. After the Black Eagles broke up, Phil was asked to join a band called Skid Row with a guy called Brush Shields, and he asked me as well. I was playing in a band called the Sugar Shack at this stage as well. After Black Eagles broke up, I was asked to join a band called the Sugar Shack, which is basically a blues band. So I just kept in contact with Phil. We used to drink together down on Grafton Street in Dublin. And but eventually he got fired, for some reason. He either got fired or he left. I'm not really sure the actual story there, but he wasn't playing anyway. So I met him in Dublin, in town as well, around that time. And he says, look, I'm doing nothing. And I said, well, I think our band is kind of breaking up as well, for shortly. He says, yeah, why don't we do something together, Phil had a couple of tunes written at this stage, and we sort of went over those a few times, and it sounded pretty good, So we decided to keep that band together for a while. Eric Bell came down to one of our gigs and saw the band and came backstage later and said, look, I've left my band. I think you need me in the band, Let's forget the orphanage and form a new band. And I was a little bit apprehensive about this, and I said it to Phil, and I said, look, we're doing okay, He says, oh yeah, let's give Eric a go, So we had these sort of secret rehearsals in some guy's garage, somewhere out of town. And it actually sounded really, really good. So we decided to get Eric in, and, really sort of the rest is history, really. We rehearsed in this place called the Countdown Club in Dublin. And we were sort of wrecking our brains to trying to find a name for the band, And Eric Bell comes up with, what don't we call it? Tin Lizzy, Tin Lizzy, Everybody goes, yeah, but that's a female robot in the Beano, comic book. Yeah, and Phil goes, well, why don't we just change it a little bit? Let's put an H in there, and call it Thin Lizzy, and confuse all the Irish people, They won't be able to pronounce it Thin Lizzy, it'd be Tin Lizzy anyway, So that's how that came about. We had a German tour coming up, and we didn't have a guitar player. So Phil decided to phone up a couple of friends of his, and we found out that John Cann and Andy G were available. We had sort of 2 or 3 days to rehearse, and then the tour started. So we had to just get those guys, no matter how they played, just to sort of do the tour of Germany. They were great guitar players, but just didn't suit the band, And we decided there and then that when we got back to London, we'd sort of break the band up, and sort of start afresh and put out the word that, we needed 2 more guitar players. So we had these like real, long auditions. Eventually, Brian Robertson came down on the recommendation of Charlie McLennan, who eventually became our road manager. And when he came down, he knew all our first and second album from Decca, and so obviously he was chosen.
My best friend who I went to school with, a guy called Big Charlie, he went off roadieing for all sorts of people, but he ended up with Lizzy. And when they were looking for a guitar player, I had already seen an advert in Melody Maker for a drummer, so I went down with my guitar and my drumsticks. It was kind of weird because I more or less got the gig as a drummer. But then a week later, I went up and rehearsed with the boys, and I had to go back to their band and say, sorry, I can't play with you, so I'm playing guitar with them. They didn't know I could play guitar, right? And the weirdest thing was, I think it was about one tour later, 2 tours later, it was that band that were supporting us. It was all very strange.
When I grew up, a lot of it was, you know, a lot of surf music, a lot of R&B, you know, that kind of thing to listen to. But when I was 13 years old, it's when the Beatles hit, you know, and the dam broke, and this new thing called the British invasion hit, you know, the West Coast, and I was totally in love with it. I mean, I just thought it was the greatest thing ever. It had always become sort of, you know, the dream of mine to travel to this mystical island called England, you know. I didn't really know where it was on the map, you know, because I hadn't bothered to look at this point. But when I did find, you know, where England was, I couldn't believe that, you know, that many bands and that many talented people all came from one place. You know, this essentially this island, you know, and I just thought, this, you know, what an incredible place to a place like this to produce that much talent, you know, in that short a space of time. So how I got to England was my then brother-in-law had joined he had gone to England, and he joined this band called Supertramp. And he goes, you know, I think if you came over, I think I might be able to get you in the band as the guitar player. I didn't know that until I actually landed in London, that it wasn't going to happen. So here I am in London. I've got really no money. I've got my little Japanese Les Paul copy, you know, and all dressed up and nowhere to go, you know. So the best thing that probably happened to me is I found myself being able to turn into this different person. I could be this more outgoing, pushy kind of guy because my visa only said 6 months on it. And really, if I made an asshole of myself, I knew I was going to get on the airplane. I was never going to see anybody again, but hey, at least I gave it a try. So that's what I did. I became this different sort of person. I was able to push myself a lot further than I ever would have done in my own hometown. I met a lot of different people, a lot of different musicians and people who lived around London. And one of the guys that I did meet was a guy named Rowan O'Loughlin, who was Irish. So he knew Phil and said, listen, I know of this band who's looking for a guitar player. Do you want me to put your name in to go down and have a jam? And I said, well, yeah, well, who are they? And he said, well, it's an Irish band. I thought, geez, Irish? I don't know anything about that, right? And he said, yeah, they're called Thin Lizzy. And I'd never heard of them.
He hadn't got a clue about Thin Lizzy, you know. He never even heard of Whiskey in the Jar, which was a big hit at that stage, you know. But he didn't know about it because he's from America and he wasn't long in London, you know, so he didn't really know about Lizzy. My
question to Rowan was, well, how much are they paying? And he said, well, I think they're gonna be paying about 30 quid a week. I thought, wow, how cool is that? Because I'm making 12 right now.